everyone, and welcome back to the Content Mix. I'm Carlota Pico, your host for today's show, and I'm excited to introduce Harriet Drudge, who is social lead at The Athletic UK and has over 10 years of experience in social media marketing. Welcome, Harriet, and thank you so much for joining us today on the Content Mix.
Hi, great to be here. Thank you for having me.
No, it's great to have you. Okay, Harriet, let's jump straight into this interview. Could you talk to me a little bit about your background experience? How did you get to where you are today?
Yeah, it's a bit of a kind of winding road. I did a business management degree and was always taking a keen interest in marketing modules when I was doing that and trying to get some experience in an industry that I was really passionate about, which was football media. So throughout my degree, I was always trying to do kind of different things on the side, extracurricular in media, getting that experience as well. So 10 years ago, my job probably didn't really exist for many companies. If there was social media involved in companies, it was usually kind of a bolt-on to an existing job role. But I kind of saw there was an opportunity there with lots of football brands kind of up and coming. So I started kind of putting my CV out to places and volunteering to lead social media marketing for there was a football podcast at the time called The Offside Rule Pod, which is still a podcast now and actually now comes under the Athletic umbrella, so that's quite a nice full circle story. So after university, kind of again was looking at jobs in media, specifically in sport. Worked for a charity called Women in Sport as their media and events officer, then progressed to 442 as their first ever social media editor and the first social media editor at Haymarket Publishing Group. So from there it kind of started building. Brands were putting more of an emphasis on social media and audience growth through social channels. So I was kind of dipping into not just football at that point and not just sport, but other brands as well and helping out there. And then I kind of went into a bit of the other side, not the dark side, I wouldn't say, but the journalism side. I was freelance for 10 months, doing a bit of writing as well as social media management for brands like DAZN, working on their commercial team for a while on their social media campaigns. And then I was approached by The Athletic last summer to head up social media marketing in the UK, which is kind of, it's social media at The Athletic is both in terms of marketing, but it's also obviously quite heavily led by content. So there's a lot of editorial responsibilities in my job, as well as kind of working across marketing, audio. We've got podcasts, written media, and lots of other things as well that I'm sure everybody watching will be appreciative of the many different fingers in pies that we have as marketing professionals.
How exciting. So what's your 30-second elevator pitch on The Athletic? What is The Athletic?
So The Athletic is kind of a revolutionary app for sports journalism, not just in the UK, but in the US as well. It's long form, the best journalism out there for sports fans. It's a subscription model. So, we've gathered the best journalists out there to give the best coverage, best content for football fans. So we've got reporters for every Premier League team in the UK and in the Championship as well. And so that's kind of the crux of it. And we're expanding all the time into different areas of the product too.
Okay, how exciting. Well, you say football, I say soccer. That's just a perfect example of why localization matters, of course. But I do have to ask you, what's your favorite football team?
My team is Manchester United, and that is very much a family thing. I actually started playing football before I was ever interested in watching it, but then I wanted to go and watch local football with my dad, and he would only take me if I could prove to him that I could watch at home. So I watched his team, Man United, play and didn't fidget so much that he refused to take me. So that's how I came to be a Manchester United fan.
Okay, wow. Well, I am a big Real Madrid fan. So obviously I'm from Madrid, and it also runs in my DNA, and my entire family supports Real Madrid. But I've, just like yourself, have been watching football or soccer, depending on what region you're in, since I was a little girl. Okay, could you talk to me about some of the experiences that have shaped you as a marketing professional?
So that's a really good question. I think my early experiences in social media management really shaped me because it was such a new area of the industry, and I was quite fresh to marketing as well. I'd only really ever studied it and not done anything kind of proactive. So when I first started working and volunteering for the Offside Rule, I was really getting to grips with what it would be like to be a social media marketing professional. So the content that they were producing in their podcasts, and also trying to make waves in the football media space on social media in their own right, separate from the content of podcasts, was something that I kind of took on and thought, well, we can't just promote podcasts because why would people want to come to us just for that if they don't know what it is? So that's when my appreciation for the kind of intricacies of social media marketing really kind of it clicked into place. And the things that I've kind of developed from that when whichever job I go into are, you know, the rule of thirds on social media, that you promote your own stuff because that's your bread and butter. I mean, if you don't promote it, who is going to? You share other content that's relevant in your wheelhouse, and then you engage with people as well. Something that I find it's taken a while for the industry to catch up with is you can't just be the media side on social media. You have to do the social thing as well. You have to engage with people for it to be a successful social media strategy. So those, I'd say, that really early kind of experience properly shaped me. And then obviously going into professional settings, and kind of taking on and putting myself forward to manage the social media platforms in my placement year when I was at the Football Foundation, when I took my first job out of university at Women in Sport. Social media was always a bolt-on to, and quite often one of the first things to get forgotten about. But in every job that I went to, I tried to elevate it because I recognised the importance and the opportunity of it. So that kind of is a bit separate. The opportunity there is first, and then it can become important to the business. So I'd say those really early stages have been pretty influential for me.
Okay, well, spinning off of that response, Harriet, what did you have to unlearn about social media when you went from theory, learning about social media in school or in uni, to later practicing social media?
Um, Actually, I don't think there was a great deal in university when I was studying about social media marketing. It's been a little while since I graduated, so there weren't any modules on it. So actually, it was a bit of um, a, a fresh slate, really, to go in and kind of almost learn about social media management on my own. I did do a lot of Googling, a lot of kind of research on social media platforms that were kind of in their infancy as well, but they were producing quite a lot of good content around, you know, so creating a social media strategy. But then, you know, creating a social media strategy will be different for every single company out there. So there are little bits that you can take from those recommendations to bring in that will be helpful. But really, I think I kind of just went with it, went with the flow, tried to piggyback off of existing marketing theories that I, you know, kind of had learned about, which probably can't remember now anyway. But yeah, I kind of tried to create my own path a little bit.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, so spinning off of that response again, what have been some of the brands that you've really admired during COVID-19 and what made them stand out?
Mm. So I think, I mean, this brand I admire anyway, even pre-COVID, and actually, it's probably not going to be that helpful in terms of um, tips to kind of give to everybody else. But Innocent Smoothies do an absolutely amazing job on social media in terms of their brand tone. They're not always trying to push smoothies at you, you know, because obviously, really, their product is quite a limited thing, but they don't limit themselves on the topics that they talk about on social media. And although obviously that won't work for everybody, I think they really did kind of set a trend in the industry by trying something completely different to everybody else. And something that I've noticed this week that they've actually launched out of home advertising that they've then brought onto social media as well. So they've taken pictures of their do you remember this? There's a big arrow pointing to something. This is a restaurant. This is where you can go out for dinner and not have to do the dishes and things like that. And it's just, they create constantly shareable things across their social media platforms that isn't always directly related to smoothies, but then they bring it back at the end. So they do have this is an innocent smoothie, we think you should drink it kind of thing. I'm paraphrasing. But I think they do a really good job of kind of following current events as well in their social media and making sure that, they do strike the right tone. They're not doing it for the likes, they're doing it for a real reason, and making sure that they stay up to date and in the moment, but then also they're not scared of being a bit silly as well, which I think is really important, especially during COVID-19. People have been looking for that outlet of something that's not constantly depressing news, and it's just something a bit different.
Okay, so what do you think is a magic recipe behind their content? Why is it so relatable?
I think keeping their finger on the pulse of current moods, what people are talking about already, and putting a bit of an innocent smoothie slant on it. They make use of their employees quite well as well. They bring their character onto the platform, and sometimes they just create their own moments as well, where they'll create a campaign because they think it'll do well. Again, it's not always to do with the smoothies. Sometimes it is. Sometimes they do a campaign around the little hats that they used to put on top of innocent smoothies, which everybody used to talk about. So yeah, I think they are very, very good at staying up to date with current events, and kind of piggybacking on that, and also they can afford now, because they've already set that tone, to not have to prioritize pushing the product all the time, which I think is a really fortunate position for them to be in. People follow them not necessarily for the smoothies, and that's a great kind of audience to have as well, is that your potential reach there is outside of your market, your target market, sometimes or most of the time, but if people remember you, they're more, and then they see your product in a store or online or when they're doing their shopping, they might be more likely to buy it because they kind of feel an affinity with the brand.
Very interesting. Okay, so moving into your current role at The Athletic, how do you create an organic social media strategy in a pay-to-play world?
Yeah, that's another brilliant question, one that I had to ask myself. I had to ask myself that question quite a lot when I was just starting the job. Given that social media is quite often a pay-to-play world in and of itself, but also we're a subscription service, so obviously there's that to consider as well. Organically, it's actually relatively, I'd say, I'm going to shy away from saying it's relatively simple, but the content is already there for me. So I have an organic kind of content pot that I can dip into every single day, because we have new articles going live every single day. So that kind of forms the basis of our organic social media strategy, that we put out our best articles on Twitter. We also bring some of that content onto Instagram, and we're also then pushing through to our HQ Facebook account, which is encompassing of all sports that we cover, not just football/soccer. Because we do cover NFL, baseball, all of the American sports as well. So in that sense, the organic planning is relatively straightforward for me to start. But then it's about kind of breaking through the noise, because we're in a very, very competitive space with football media in this country. So what we try to do is kind of create our own tone of voice on social, make sure that we're consistent with that, we pitch ourselves as, the place to go for in-depth features, about the most in-depth features that you're going to get about your football club, and that's really important to maintain that tone throughout all of the social media posts as well. So we try and do different things. We don't react, we don't place an emphasis on being the first to a story. We want to tell you everything you need to know about a story. So if that takes a bit of time, then that takes a bit of time. So in that sense, that's quite good for me, because I can then also plan around how our organic social is going to look there. Am I going to make a Twitter card? Are we going to do a campaign? Are we then going to put it through to paid social and to see where it goes from there? So in that sense, that's how we're trying to make a bit of noise. We're trying to adopt all of the different kind of strategies that companies like Zoom have enabled you to do live Zooms on Twitter. So we did make use of that around the time of the Premier League restart, when there was a bit of a stop in the season and then they came back. We had all of our Premier League reporters do a kind of mini season preview coming in and out of Zoom with some hosts. So we're trying to keep our fingers on the buzzer there as well, in terms of trying different things, new things. And yeah, that was really successful. And it just goes to show that you can adopt these things kind of at late notice as well, and be quick and, reactive in that way, to come up with something that organically is going to work really, really well.
Yeah. So if you're posting content on your social media channels, talk to me about the step that it requires your users to then subscribe to the app as well. Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so we have a paywall. So you can, if you click through to an article from Twitter, you will see the first kind of couple of paragraphs, as is standard across media, if there is a subscription attached to that. We have regular offers that we promote on Twitter for subscribers. And we also have a free trial, either 7 days or 30 days, depending on whereabouts we are in the year. And also what we did do during when countries started going into lockdown, and entertainment and kind of, your outlet, your kind of escape, was, following your passion, whether that's watching things on Netflix or reading different books or reading sports content. We wanted to give something back to our communities as well. So we made our free trial 90 days, so that, 3 months there, given the indefinite nature of lockdown at that point, we wanted people to, one, be able to enjoy our content, and given the instability of financial situations for everybody, we were also conscious that we didn't want to be charging people or promoting something that was a discount rather than a free trial. Right. So we have that kind of opportunity for potential new subscribers, and there is a function where if you're already a subscriber, then the user journey there is you log in on one device, and then you should be able to get through each time to be able to access your subscription. We do often have campaigns that run where we put things above the paywall, so that again, we want to be able to show people what we're about. The only way that people really are going to get what we're about is if they start reading our articles, and also enjoying our podcasts. All of our podcasts are free, so you can access athletic content for free through the podcasts, and obviously there is kind of a cross promotion there, because quite often sometimes the podcasts will be talking about an article that we've written, and on that kind of topic, so any transfers that have happened and things like that. So there's lots of different enter points for potential subscribers, and there are also lots of offerings there for free.
Okay, excellent. So you're posting snippets of your content across your channels, and those snippets are later used to attract new subscribers to the app.
Yes. So kind of going back to the promote, share and engage side of things that I kind of tried to take across all social media strategies with me. So we promote our articles. That's kind of the main thing. We promote our podcasts as well. So we'll take a snippet, a quote. We'll make some video kind of audio cards as well for our podcasts to bring onto our social media channels. What's also then important is that we promote our writers. So we get our writers to be active on social media platforms as well. So they are posting their articles on the day of publication, and then whenever it is relevant again to do so. And then we also then bring a social only side. Hopefully, well, that's the kind of the main end goal is to bring a social only aspect to what we're promoting as well. So, for example, we wrote about we had an article about the Community Shield at the weekend just gone, which was the title of it was, should the Community Shield be considered a trophy, or how should we consider the Community Shield? Does it matter? So that in itself lent itself to a poll on Twitter, which non-subscribers and our followers can all get involved with and engage with the brand that is The Athletic. So there's lots of different kind of threads to pull in terms of the content that we put out, that's written, that's audio, and then we want to also be a place to go on social media for football fans, whether they subscribe or not. So that's kind of an overall aim for us. We want to be a big player in the football media, social media space.
Harriet, you already mentioned a few tips that you use in order to attract more attention to your social channels by like posting polls, snippets of the content. But let's say you have a very small social media budget. What would you invest it in and why?
Well, I think I go down the organic route first before deciding what to spend money on, because I think you want to test out what works for your brand on social channels before you end up investing in it, because as I said earlier, social media strategy will be different for every company across the board, even if you're in the same industry. So I'd probably say one thing, depending on what the company is, competitions and giveaways are a great way to build your audience. So if you can use those kind of ideas to attract new customers, new people to your brand, do some giveaways that way. That way is a good way of building your audience. And then I'd say engaging with people is really, really important. So I'm from the Isle of Wight, and there's a company on the Isle of Wight that is a photography shop. Basically, they print canvases, they print bags, magnets, postcards, all of that kind of thing. And their social media, they don't really use a budget at all. But I understand that this kind of company, it lends itself to social media sharing because their business is photos and amazing photos. But they do a giveaway every Sunday night. And what they do is they have two pictures, and they say, comment on underneath here with which picture you would like to win, which is a great way of getting lots and lots of comments, and also getting your, and this is on Facebook, is getting your brand in the feeds of people who don't yet follow you, because depending on the algorithm and how it's feeling that day, you might be then put into friends feeds that you've commented on this particular post. So that's a great way of doing that without actually having to spend any money. And then obviously there is the capability to then boost that post to a specific audience if you want to do that. So I think there are definitely good ways of kind of gaining traction and attention without spending money originally. But then when you've really honed in on what works for you, that's where to put your budget. So I would always suggest trying something organically first before putting any budget behind it.
Wow, that's really valuable advice, Harriet. Okay, well, to finish up this section of our interview, I'd like to ask you to zoom into a social media project or campaign that you're particularly proud of, and obviously talk a little bit about its purpose, what made it stand out, stuff like that.
I think the one most recently that I've managed has been the Premier League restart. There was a lot of noise around, obviously, football coming back. People were really keen. They'd kind of gone through this few months without any football, and we knew that was going to be a big moment for us. It also was around about the time or approaching the Athletic UK's first anniversary. So we kind of wanted to make sure that we went big. So working with the editorial team at the Athletic about all the content that was coming, I then also developed marketing assets around our writers. So one of our unique selling points as the Athletic UK is that we have a reporter for every single Premier League club. We don't just cover the big six of Liverpool, Man United, City. We also have, our Burnley writer, our Sheffield United writer. We also do cover the Championship. So we wanted to make sure that breadth of coverage was, really reflected in our marketing throughout that week. So we came up with a kind of slogan, I guess, of "We care about your club," and we made sure that we were marketing not just our content but our writers as well, because people really kind of relate to our writers. Our writers are that fly on the wall, getting all the information that fans absolutely yearn for. They love it. So that was quite a big campaign for us. So we had a whole week kind of building up to the start of football, where I did I kind of packaged all of the club content into threads on Twitter in particular, where we had a focus on, and that was actually the title that we used. So a focus on Liverpool, focus on Brighton and Hove Albion, where we had the kind of what's coming up, what can we expect from the restart as the content, and that was free. So anybody could access that, subscriber or not. And then a thread of our best content, best evergreen content that was still relevant. So we had podcasts included in that. We had interviews from earlier on in the year, and making sure that was kind of, that we really hammered home the fact that is what we do. We are at every single Premier League club. We're at some of the Championship clubs as well. Give us time. Hopefully we'll expand to cover more clubs, because we, one of the things that we do, get questions about all the time is, oh, why don't you cover this club? Why don't you cover this club? It's like, well, we're kind of still in startup mode over here. So, give us time, keep supporting us, and, keep telling us what you want as well. And we'll do everything that we can, because what we want to do is put our subscribers first. And that was kind of a message that we wanted to get out during that week as well. And that all culminated in the live Zoom that I mentioned earlier on, where we got all of our writers on that. They kind of are popping in and popping out and doing 5 minutes on their club. And that was really fun. I mean, I ended up having to be a producer, where I was letting people in from the waiting room on Zoom and putting them out again. And so that was kind of a learning on the job situation. And terrifying, because I was absolutely terrified that, as a bit of a, the technology was going to go wrong or something, and it'll all be my fault and it would look rubbish on our social channels. But thankfully it didn't. And we've now tried that again with some club specific things. So that marketing campaign, where it wasn't just focused on content, we also were bringing the writers and their personalities out on our social channels as well, which was really, really good, because again, they're our influencers. They're the names that were brought into the company because they're the best at what they do, and we want to make a big deal out of that as well, because we believe that, we trust in them, and they are the best at what they do.
That's a nice little shout out to your writers. On that note, we are going to be moving into our rapid fire section of the interview. It's your recommendation for our audience. To get this section started off, I'd like to ask you about your source of inspiration. So who inspires you? A professional role model, or perhaps an influencer?
Again, that's a really great question, because I've always wanted to work in football. It kind of, and football media. There are kind of a lot of people that I could mention here, but the kind of main ones are the real role models of the kind of founding members of the Women in Football support group, the network. They, came together to represent and kind of champion women working in football, playing football, wanting to be involved in any kind of facet of football. And one name in particular that, when I was growing up, I always kind of was hearing about, because she was the first commentator on Match of the Day, was Jackie Oatley. So she's been a massive inspiration. And then all of the other kind of women in the industry that I've met since. So Jo Tung, who's now an agent, she represents broadcasters in sport media, and also female players. She's just a force of nature as well. She's just really, really good at what she does, and also good at kind of bringing through younger talent as well. And it would be remiss of me not to mention Lindsay Hooper and Kate Borsay, who were the founders of the Offside Rule podcast, which is where I started my journey, which sounds a bit deep. My journey into social media marketing and management that way. So they were brilliant as well. I met them at university. I met them whilst I was at university. They were already well established in the industry. And I was their first volunteer on the social media team for the Offside Rule podcast. And any kind of advice that I needed, then they were always there. They still are always there on the end of the phone. And what's really nice now is that we're able to work together again. And hopefully I can use my position now to elevate that podcast even further. It was the first of its kind in terms of it being an all-female fronted football podcast. The original title of it was The Offside Rule, We Get It, because something that's been thrown at women for however long is that we don't understand the offside rule, and that we don't actually understand much about football at all. That is one question that all of us have experienced at some point in our career, is like, oh, so do you actually like football? Well, yeah, it's kind of important to what we do day in, day out. Those two have been massively influential in my career, and definitely inspirations for me.
Well, on that note, I do want to give a little shout out to the American women soccer team, who are the leaders in pushing for equal pay. Unfortunately, there's a big gender gap when it comes to soccer or football, depending on what region you're in. And the American women team has just been really fighting for equal rights and equal pay. Okay, and now moving into a resource that you'd like to recommend. So, for example, a book, a publication, a community, an event.
I think the main source of kind of blogs and inspiration and kind of learning for me throughout my career has been kind of outlets like Social Chain. They're an agency that was set up by Steve Bartlett, and he kind of saw a gap in the market for a social media first agency. They create loads of kind of resources in terms of the updates to all the platforms, given how many updates they make constantly, all the new emerging platforms, where you should be as a brand if you're thinking about this kind of content stream, all of that kind of stuff. So I'd probably say Social Chain, and also the platforms like Hootsuite and Sprout Social, and all of those kind of social management tools. They're also now working quite a lot in content of their own, creating their own content and tips that you don't have to be a signed up member of any of these social tools. You can access those resources to help you build your social strategy. So I found those really helpful over the years. And also they've, Hootsuite in particular in this country used to host some kind of breakfast meetings where you could network with social media professionals and, kind of meet different people outside of your industry and kind of get inspiration from them. Because again, like I said earlier, and I'll keep saying, social media management and strategy for every company is very, very different, but you can take inspiration from those outside of your industry as well. There's lots of different ideas. Everybody's trying different things all the time as well. That's one of the benefits of social media, is that it's quite you're quite free in a way. So you have the freedom to to try different things, be creative, and if it doesn't work, fine, move on. As long as it stays within the right kind of tone and kind of works with your brand, I'd say definitely give it a go.
Okay, excellent. Okay, and what about your favorite app at the moment? What would that be besides The Athletic, obviously?
Besides The Athletic, obviously, which I'm on every day, I'd say one to de-stress is the Calm app. I used that for the free version for a little while, just to kind of get a sense of what it was about. And it's a really good way to kind of either drift off to sleep if you want to listen to something, and you then also don't have to have a screen on and that blue light that kind of we all read about so much that makes it really difficult to get to sleep. But it's also really good for kind of calming music if you need something during the day even to listen to do a task, but you don't want it to be kind of pop and music and the songs that you're going to sing along to. There's some really nice kind of soundscapes on there that I really enjoy listening to.
Okay, excellent. And I'm going to throw a curveball at you as our final question of today's interview. Harriet, if you could do anything in this world, would it still be social media?
That's I love my job. I really, really do love my job, and I also enjoy working with the people that I work with. So I'd say at the moment, I am in the dream job. So I'm going to stick. I think, I always thought when I was a bit younger that I wanted to be a football journalist, that I wanted to be a writer. I do dabble sometimes. I had an article that went live on The Athletic this week, which was great experience. But I've really found that my skills and my organisation in particular, it works in social media management and strategy. So yes, I would still do social media.
Okay, excellent. Well, Harriet, thank you so much for joining us today on the Content Mix. It was awesome to meet you and to pick your brain on so many different subjects and to also talk more about The Athletic and football, which is a topic that I love.
Oh, great. Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been great.
The pleasure has been mine. And to everybody listening in today, thank you for joining us on the Content Mix. For more perspectives on the content marketing industry in Europe, check out the Content Mix. We'll be releasing interviews just like this one every day, so keep on tuning in. Thanks again. Have a fabulous day and see you next time. Bye.